But let's check and see how it's cooking. Oh yeah, it's bubbling along very nicely. Hello everyone, Mav Hunter here. I'm cooking what I feel is the most natural, healthiest food to feed my dog. In addition to a high quality grade of kibble, I usually give my dog a good heaping spoonful of this dog food that I make in a crock pot, a slow cooker. You can buy fresh dog food like farm fresh or food from the farmer's dog, etc., but it's very expensive. While I am a hunter, and usually a very successful hunter, I most prefer elk for me to consume for meals. Elk being very much like beef in taste. Venison, I keep the prime parts to eat for my dinner, such as the tenderloins and the backstrap, etc. But the deer's taste reminds me of lamb, and I'm not a big fan of eating lamb. So what I've done is I went to my veterinarian one day with my dog, and she mentioned how much she would like to have some wild game meat upon learning that I was a, quote, deer hunter. And she was willing, the veterinarian, to trade her services for, say, 50 pounds of venison. Well, an average mule deer buck is going to give you about 130, 140 pounds of meat, a big buck. So what she was asking was nearly half of a deer for her to carry services for my dog. Well, that set off a light bulb in my head, and I asked her a few questions, and she mentioned how healthy wild game is for your dog. And the fact that she was offering to trade her services for 50 pounds of venison, well, I thought to myself, I better start cooking some of this venison for my dog. And you'll see later on in the video how much Luna, my little pointador, that is, she's part Labrador and she's part German short hair pointer, how much she enjoys that in her dinner, and how healthy and shiny a fur coat that she has. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy. It's very important to get as much of the fat and the sinew and the ligaments off the meat as you possibly can. Deer or venison fat is not the same as beef fat. Beef fat has a lot of flavor to it, etc., where the fat on venison is very tallow tasting. It just does not have a good taste. Here I'm removing the silver skin. You can see I'm using a very sharp boning knife, and then this to slide the blade between the meat and the silver skin and remove that, and I put the silver skin in the scrap pile, which will be tossed in the garbage when I'm finished. But even though this is for dog food, it's still, the old adage is quality in, quality out. So I put the very best cuts that I can, removing any freezer burn, silver skin, fat deposits, etc., from the meat. I'm using a 5.5-inch boning knife, butcher's boning knife, but for more delicate skin work to remove skin, etc., and freezer burn, I'll often use an 8-inch fillet knife. And both of these knives are ultra sharp, and that's what you need. I'll use a third knife here, and that is a 10-inch chef's knife for when I cut up the vegetables, the carrots and the sweet potato, to add to the dog chow. Wild game tends to shrink quite a bit because, like I say, it doesn't have the fat content that beef has. So I want to cut these into pretty good size 1-inch cubes of meat. This was an older rear quarter roast of venison, and it got a little bit of freezer burn, so I'm going to trim some of that away along with the silver skin. And I trim this especially well if I'm making a stew for my own consumption or for my own dinner. But here you can see the fillet knife being used because of the longer, thinner blade, and it's really sharp, and I can slide it just under the silver skin and the fat, removing all the fat and silver skin without removing too much of the meat itself. I usually cut with the grain, so I'll make one long slice with the grain here of this trimmed meat. So I'll cut this lengthwise to get in the proper size, and then I'll cut it into, generally speaking, 1.5 inch pieces and add it to the bowl of cut and trimmed meat. And here you can see the trimmed scrap that I will throw away in the garbage. Always wipe off your blades immediately when you're done with them. And I'll clean. So I've got a couple carrots here. I'm going to chop up these carrots and add those to the mix. This is where the 10-inch chef's knife comes in very handy. But carrots and the sweet potato are actually very good for the dog's diet. Oftentimes I'll add green beans as well, but I don't add the beans until late in the cooking process. And there you can see a bowl of cut fresh meat for my second batch of dog food. I like to cut this sweet potato sort of quarters. You'll see here that's a little thick, so I'm going to cut it once again. Well, what I'm trying to do here is keep it so that when I cut it into small cubes, each piece still retains a piece of the sweet potato skin. The sweet potato skin helps keep the flesh of the sweet potato from breaking down and becoming just mush. So I like to keep a little bit of skin on each piece of the sweet potato or the yam. Sweet potato for the second batch. I'm going to add about half a cup here of just white short grain rice, just to add some filler and to thicken up the dog chow. Now adding a little bit of beef broth. I'd say about 1.5 cups to start. And then I'll top this off with some water from the refrigerator water dispenser. And I want to make sure the meat is covered and enough water is added so it covers and floats a potato or two. And during the cooking process, I will check every couple hours. I'll take the lid off the crock pot and check to make sure I still have enough fluid and add more water as needed. We're ready to start the cooking process. Water level looked good. Remember, there's 1.5 cups of beef broth in there as well. So I'm going to set the crock pot to low and cook it for about 7 hours. But as mentioned before, I'll check it every couple hours. "49 minutes left. Perfect. Got a great simmer going. Okay. It's been just over 7 hours slow cooking in the crock pot. So let's see how this venison stew turned out with the sweet potatoes and the carrots. And maybe a little bit later here, I'll add some green beans. I normally don't add the green beans throughout the whole cooking process because they kind of disintegrate. So I add some green beans here, usually in the last 30 minutes of cooking. But let's see how this turned out. Open up the lid. Still nice and warm. Oh yeah, it turned out very nice. There's our carrots and our sweet potatoes. Maybe a little bit more liquid, so I'm going to probably add a little bit more beef broth because got just a little bit thick there, adding in the rice. There we go, that thins it out there a little bit. Also freezes up very well. This is about a week's worth of venison stew to mix with the dog kibble for little Luna's. But it'll keep for a good week in the fridge. This is a glass Rubbermaid container here that I have here on the side. Spoon this up. Never put hot food in a refrigerator, so I'm going to spoon this up into a dish here. A week's worth of breakfast and dinner for the dog, and usually she gets one big spoon of this food and also a cup or 3/4 of a cup of dog kibble. But there you have it. Mav's venison doggy chow. Good enough for me to eat too. Sit. Sit. There we go. You want your dinner? You want your little dinner there? Huh, Luna? Good, Luna. Okay, we'll get you dinner. We'll get you dinner. Sit.